It is time. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to stand up. It's time for Christians to come together, to share their testimony, to inspire hope, and to join their brothers and sisters as we answer the call. It's time to wake up the lions. And I have a lioness with me today, folks. Please welcome to the podcast, journalist and host of the podcast Positively Joy, Healing Hearts After Divorce, Yvette Walker. Yvette, how are you doing today?
I am well. Thank you so much, Rory, for having me on your show.
I appreciate you coming on. We have a lot to get through, and I can't wait to hear more about your podcast and your particular mission and what you're dealing with. As we kind of get rolling here today, tell everybody, who is Yvette Walker? What are you about, and what brings you here?
Absolutely. Well, hi, everyone. I am a journalist. I'm originally from Chicago, now living in Kansas City. And I started the Positively Joy podcast 4 years ago, right in the middle of COVID, May of that month. And basically, I felt the Lord asking me to really tell people what joy is, what His joy is, what real joy is. It's not just being happy all the time. It's it's understanding that you can feel that satisfaction in His presence. And so I've been doing that for about 3.5 years when I just started feeling this pull, this nudge to talk to women who have been divorced or who are going through separation or something like that. Because in Christian circles, that can be difficult depending on the part of the country you're in, the church that you go to. I am a divorced Christian woman, now remarried. I felt that I did not have God in the middle of that divorce or that time during my marriage when I was having some problems.
Hmm.
And I fully recognize him now, fully understand he's in the middle of my marriage now. And so part of that is, I want to tell people that you can feel redeemed and you can feel loved. And the big piece of that is the love part, because I believe that women, and I would say probably men too, but since I don't have that experience, I can't say, but women will feel like they will just never be loved again or alone again. And that's really part of my testimony. During the process, I had been divorced. It was a difficult marriage. My husband suffered from bipolar disorder, which I didn't know he had going into the marriage. And to be honest, I can't say that he knew he had it either. He'd been misdiagnosed a few times over the years. We thought that he had Epstein-Barr syndrome, which back in the day, they would call it chronic fatigue syndrome. You may have heard of that. He slept a lot of fatigue, later was diagnosed with bipolar. And there's a couple different types. One is the one where you're tired all the time, and one is where you're manic. But even the one where you're tired all the time will have a few manic episodes in a year, and those can be very difficult. High energy, get rich quick schemes, just, a mania of sorts. After 13 years of marriage, and I got married in the church. And so I was committed to my vows. But I believe that even people with mental health disorders do have to take control of their disease. They need to they need to do more than take medicine. They need to have talk therapy. They need to practice healthy eating and exercise and really look at it from a holistic point of view, which he wasn't doing. And toward the end, he began to engage in some behavior that I just said, nope, we're not doing that anymore. So that was a difficult decision to make, that divorce, because I was married in the Catholic Church and again, really felt like my vows were deeply seated. But I did divorce. And I just want to say, for people who are going through that right now, you really do need to bring God in the middle of that. And I felt like I was not leaning on him during that time. But fast forward just a little bit after that, I started dating again. Yes, I was a serial dater. I like to be in relationships. I just do. I don't like, I don't like being alone. But sometimes you have to understand that there's a time, and to be honest, you're never alone because you're with God, but there's a time when you need to look into a new relationship, and that relationship is with the Lord. I didn't understand that. And so after a relationship where I thought this is the next husband, and that broke up, I was just devastated. And so during one, what I call particularly dark night of the soul, I was I was upset, crying, and I couldn't get to sleep. And I had K-Love on the radio, and Matthew West's song More came on, where Matthew West is singing from the perspective of the Lord, that I love you, talking to us. I love you more than all these things I've created, the stars and the sun and the moon and all these things. I love you more. And in that moment, the Lord showed me that I didn't have to worry about being alone the rest of my life, which is what I thought the problem was. And I didn't have to worry that I would never be loved again, which was the real issue.
Hmm.
And I realized that in that moment, he told me, I love you, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. It was as if a light switched or flipped, what light switch flipped. And I just said, wow, okay. And he shared with me that I needed to stop dating and spend some time with him. And so I did that. And so I got into the word. I spent more time with him, about a year and a half, I'd say. And then at the end of that time, I felt a release, as if to say, okay, you can start dating again. And I met 3 individuals after that. And the third one is my husband today. And I felt that God was in the middle. He was completely in the middle of that in a way that that I know. I'm not even sure my husband really, who is a godly man, I'm not even sure that he believes. He said, I believe you believe that. But I knew immediately that he was the one. And to be honest, I wasn't expecting someone like him. You know how we all have different ideals of who we're going to be with.
Sure.
And he was a little different than this ideal that I had. But when I met him and we were sitting around talking, I said, oh, I'm talking to him, but in my mind, I'm having a conversation with God saying, oh, this is the guy? This is the guy you have for me? Okay. And I just knew instantly. And so that was that. But I think the point of what I'm trying to communicate to women now is that whether it's in your marriage or whether it's in your separation and divorce, God has got to be in the middle of it. You have to understand that no matter what's happening, you can lean on him, you can go to him. And whether or not, I'm not going to debate with you today about is there divorce in the Bible, what Jesus said about divorce. Is there any of that? I'm not going to have that debate today. But this is a reality. People get divorced. We know this. Mm-hmm. And many of those people are Christians. And so I want to speak love. I want to speak redemption into the women who are going through this right now. And so I pivoted with the podcast from joy. We still talk about joy because even the women who are going through divorce and separation need to understand what that real joy is. You may have days where you're feeling very down, feeling very sad because it's a loss of a relationship, but you can still find the joy of the Lord. And so we're still talking about joy. I didn't want to change the name of the podcast because God gave me that name. That's a whole nother story. But I said, you know what, let's just put a little ending on it. So possibly joy, healing hearts after divorce.
Wow, that's quite a bit to unpack. I love it. First of all, let me put your mind at ease. This is not the show where you debate that point, so don't worry about that.
Okay.
That's not what we do here. And I want to hear some of these other things that you brought up too, but I do want to say, before we go any further, that one of the things that I love about what you're doing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're really encouraging women, especially, to have an independent relationship with Jesus between them and him, and not get wrapped up in whatever that particular religion is telling you or what society is telling you. You need to have that personal relationship one-on-one. Am I picking that up?
Oh, yeah. No, I would completely agree with you. And I also like to say that you are not going to get that complete joy or satisfaction from your husband or from your children. You have to get it from God. And then bring him into your family. That's going to change everything. But I think a lot of people go into it, if they're having a difficult marriage or whatever. And my podcast is not an anti-marriage podcast. I mean, I'm remarried, so I believe in marriage.
Sure.
And so whether or not you're in the middle of that right now, some people are trying to find some kind of satisfaction or fulfillment in that relationship. Or if it's not working, let's have a baby, or let's turn my attention toward the kids. No, you're not looking, you're looking maybe at the symptoms, but you're not trying to heal whatever disorder is going on. And that alone can only be done through God.
Sure. I totally agree with you 100% on everything you just said, which is beautiful. And no, I didn't get that idea from your podcast. Your podcast comes off as much more supportive
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, hey, if you have to go through this, you're not alone. Here's
Yeah,
some things to think about. Here's some help with certain areas. And that people have to kind of, take care of themselves and, connect with God so that they can heal themselves that way, through Jesus first. And then they can go on and look for the next date, the next, the next edition. Right? So,
absolutely.
yeah. So, I mean, I love what you're doing through the podcast.
Thank you.
You have to tell me the story now. I mean, God gave you the name. Okay. You
All
can't drop that and walk away.
I know, I know. Well, all right. So again, we're talking like May of 2020. And if you go back, so if you go back and go to the very first episode, and you can do that, just go back to the very first episode, you will hear me say, welcome to the Finding Joy podcast. I had done like no research or anything. And so after that, I said, I should probably look and see like how many names out there that has, well, there were a lot of them, right? A lot of incarnations of like finding joy, seeking joy, whatever. And I was sitting at the dining room table. Lord, we got to find a name. I'm not quite sure we can just go with this. And in my spirit, I heard him tell me positively joy. The reason why I know, just like I knew that he sent my husband to me, the reason why I know for sure that that is from him and not from me is because the phrase positively joy is grammatically incorrect. I'm a journalist. I know this. And I even remember sitting there at that dining room table saying to myself, but saying to him, Lord, we can't use that. That's grammatically incorrect. And then I heard him respond in my spirit, what did I just say? I'm like, okay, all right, I heard you. And so that is the name. And I would not have chosen that name. I would have perhaps chosen positively joyful or positively joyous. That is grammatically incorrect. It is correct, right? But that's not what he said. So I did want to lose that name because I know he gave that to me. But I did want to let the audience know, okay, we're talking about healing hearts after divorce right now. And so that's why we had that change. But I didn't want to get rid of the original name because it's special and he gave it to me.
I love it. I love the story behind it too. It's amazing how God steps in and reminds us all that it's not our job to be perfect, even
Mm-hmm.
grammatically,
That is so true. That's so
right?
true. And I've heard people tell me, oh, no, I really like the name. I hadn't even thought about that. And so I don't know if it's catchy or whatever it is, but I was thinking about it from my own human way. But the another lesson I think in that is to be obedient. And I really do
Yeah.
try to be obedient when the Lord tells me something. So I said, okay.
I love it. I love it. One of the things that people talk about a lot is spiritual warfare. And whenever I meet somebody like you, which is often on this show, I'm blessed for that, but who is very open about their faith, who wears it on their sleeve, and it's part of who they are. Very often there's some blowback from either people they know or social media, families, and very often our jobs. I've never spoken to a journalist on this topic before. I'm guessing that there may have been some that you've had to kind of deal with. Is that the case? And what sort of spiritual warfare have you encountered?
Well, I am so fortunate now. And the job that I do have now is working in the opinion section, which means I get to have opinions. But
Wow.
I was a news journalist for years before this. And you are right. There were times when I did not speak openly about my faith. I mean, people knew I went to church, I guess, and actually during the season of Lent, there were a few people from the newsroom. We'd go on the lunch hour. That was our Lenten practice. We would go to, the church down the street for that. But I definitely would not be doing what I'm doing now. I would feel very uncomfortable because at that time, I was responsible for the front page of the newspaper. making choices about what was going in there. So I felt like I needed to be objective. And yes, we need to have, even though a lot of people don't believe this, but we need to be, and we try and we strive to be on the news side, objective in what we write and how we present it. At that time, the job that I had, I could not, at least I felt like I could not do what I'm doing now. Over the years, I've been in several roles, and the Lord presented this opportunity to me. I had not worked in the opinion section before, and but the Lord will give you something, and it makes it really hard to not take it. Uh, so this is a great opportunity, and I even said in my job interviews, now I'm a faithful woman, and I have a faith based podcast. I mean, I was just very upfront about it because at that time, and so I made that clear. So I think that I am in a position now to be fortunate to be able to have opinions, to be able to speak my mind. And part of that is my faith. But I think that there are a lot of people today who are in offices, Fortune 500 companies or whatever, who might feel very uncomfortable about that. Particularly, I think even this I will say the season we're in now, but sometimes actually there's a few different parts of society that are very faithful and do want to speak truth to power in that regard. So I guess it just depends on kind of where you are and what kind of company you work for. And I know that can be very difficult. I would say, is that a combination of reality and spiritual warfare? I'm going to say yes. Because even though you may be in that situation and you not only do you really just believe or feel like you need to keep it under wraps, it's it's been told to you, keep it under wraps. Now,
Right.
is the enemy pushing that agenda? Is the enemy working on that? I would say it's entirely possible. But I would say even when I came to this position, I still felt a little hesitant. Just because I've been working as a journalist for so long and then moving to opinion was relatively new. Um, it's kind of like the old ways were still kind of hanging on me. Was that the enemy trying to keep me uncomfortable, keep me hesitant, possibly? But I had to break through that in order to not only keep doing what I was doing, because before I came into this position, I was out of journalism altogether. I started teaching. I started working for a university teaching journalism, where I could certainly have my faith. Um, so if you are in a position now, you're listening, you're in a position now where you feel uncomfortable sharing your faith, I think you need to think about um, how you're going to do it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to proselytize in your company, but do you have a blog or a newsletter? Or do you have a podcast? You may have to get permission from your employers to do that, and just let them know about it. I think being on the up and up is always a good thing,
Of course.
and understand kind of where you are. And if it comes to the position where you can't do what you want to do, but you feel like the Lord is calling you to do it, does that mean you might have to make a change? That's a scary thing to do in these times. But that's something that I think you need to pray about and really go to the Lord with.
Yeah. I love that advice. I really do. And I appreciate you sharing that the way you
Mm-hmm.
did. It's we'd all love to think it's a cut and dry thing. Hey, if you're strong in your faith, then you got to stand up, right? And part of
Mm-hmm.
what we do in this podcast is encourage people to stand up more.
Of course.
But there's also not jumping off the cliff after you've stood up, because you know you, you have to still be viable, right? As a
Mm-hmm.
income earning person and take care of your family and everything else in
Mm-hmm.
order to build discipleship and keep things going. But when people come on the podcast, I am curious about how much they've been sort of told or suggested to tone down the God thing,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak.
Well, I
And,
have to
and
say, no one ever told me that. I was keeping myself down because I
ah,
felt it was important. I'm a journalist. I believe in ethics and objectivity. I'm in charge of the front page. So I did that to myself. And I don't know if that was a combination of what I truly believed and the enemy whispering in my ear. Of course, this was before the podcast, before I had started doing any of that. But yeah, but no one ever told me that. I did that to myself because I thought I knew what was necessary in that role. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. You brought up earlier getting permission, being on the up and up. Did you do that? Did you go and say, "Hey, I'm going to start this, and is this going to be
Well,
okay?"
I was already doing it. So when I was working at
I
the
see.
university, I did not because I wasn't in daily journalism. When I got back into it during the interview process, I revealed that I was doing this, and I said, okay.
Okay, you told them right up front. There you go.
I did, and I have to say that I thought about this beforehand, and I said, what if they tell you you can't do this anymore? What do you? And I can't take that job. I mean, I could not, with good faith. The Lord told me to do this. I mean, since 2019, another backstory, but I went to a felt kind of an opening of sorts. I felt like the Lord gave me a lot of things to say. I was writing in a way that I hadn't written before. I'm a communicator, I'm a journalist, but I had never written in his honor, in his glory.
Hmm.
So I uh, started writing books. I started even writing Christian lyrics. I'm not a musician, I'm not musical, but I started writing Christian songs, the lyrics to songs. I started doing all these things. And so once that has happened, the Lord has kind of opened you in this way. Closing that is a bad idea. so I did think about that. I said, what if they tell me that you really can't do this? And I just said to myself, and that didn't happen, but I said to myself, I'm not going to be able to accept this job because the Lord has commanded me to do this. And so I'm going to be obedient and keep doing it. I don't know about you. This does not pay the bills yet. I mean, we'd all like that to happen at some point, and we're working on it, right? But this is a message that He's given me, and the Lord has given you a message. He's commanded us to go speak. He has commanded us to witness. And once that happens, you can't say no.
No.
I don't think you can.
Not even a little. I love that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for me, I am blessed. This does actually pay my bills. I do this full time now, but it's,
Good. Oh,
taken
congratulations.
a long time. So,
Uh-huh.
but you're right. In most cases, it doesn't. And so you do have to kind of, say, hey, where does my belief lie? Where does my conviction lie? And it sounds like you've done that. One thing that I do believe very strongly is that when you're called, you answer,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. And you can't ignore that, no matter what. So I love that you're doing that as well. I'm curious if we can go back maybe just half a second on your one of the things that you discussed earlier was, when people get divorced, they do run into some issues with their church sometimes, depending on what their particular denomination feels and what's written and so on. Is that what happened to you when you were going through that?
I have been so fortunate. The Lord,
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
awesome.
I actually have not suffered from a lot of the problems that I hear from. So I have an interview based show and I talk to people every week. During the summer, we've slowed down to about every other week. And so I've heard so many stories, but I knew this was happening. So I was raised Catholic, and then and I wouldn't call myself a lapsed Catholic, but the Lord has never commanded me to change religions, to actually convert. So technically, I'm still Catholic, but I was received into the Episcopal Church, which is a thing. So I was officially received into the Episcopal Church. And then when I met my husband, who was raised Methodist, he was uncomfortable. He liked to go to a non-denominational church. He brought me to his church. I loved it. I loved the message. And so now we go to a non-denominational church. And that was part of our, when we had the marriage talk, it's like, okay, there's some things you need to go to church with me. That's a non-breakable thing. He's like, oh yeah, no, that's fine. So we go to a non-denominational church. Catholic, Episcopal, I have never had a problem with that, but I know it happens. So I will tell you another short story. Once the Lord nudged me in this way and we pivoted to talk about these relationships, I said, you know what? I think I'd like to do a small group about this because the church we go to now and my previous church, their whole thing is, we are a church of people with small groups, right? And so if there's something not happening, then you need to start your own small group. And so I said, okay, but I'm going to ask for permission because I'm just not sure how they feel about this. So I go to the small group coordinator and I said, hey, I have this podcast and I think this is really important. There's probably a lot of women here who are divorced. In fact, I know there are. And so, I'd like to start this small group. Would you have a problem with that? And I just told him, I reminded him of this just the other day because it was kind of funny. He said, let me get back to you on that. Now, in my mind, I'm like, okay, here we go. This is a non-touchable thing. But actually, no. The care pastor had the same idea. And in fact, not only was he thinking about small group, he was thinking about creating a program, or not creating a program, but bringing a program called Divorce Care, which is a long established faith-based divorce program, but anyone can go to it. It's in the community, it's at various different churches, but he wanted to bring it to this church. And not only was he interested in caring for that part of the flock, he wanted me to help lead that group. And so I made an assumption when the small groups pastors, let me check on something for you. No, that wasn't it at all. But even I was unsure because I didn't know how it would be received at this particular church. Yeah. And so when that happened, it was just another affirmation that the Lord wanted me in this space. Divorce Care is a national program. As I said, it is at churches, but also just in communities. I think it's divorcecare.org. So if there's anyone out there who would like to check that out, it's a 13-week based program used with videos and conversation. We meet in person. We watch videos. We talk about all the different issues, anger, fear, all the different things that will happen during that process. And it's a great program. And I am blessed to help lead it with another gentleman from my church. And again, like I said, that was just confirmation that the Lord wanted me in this space.
And that's interesting right there at the end. You're leading this group. I guess I was just under the impression that it was a women's group because that's who you talk about supporting. So it's not.
It is not. It is a co-ed group.
Interesting. Okay. Because when you said that there was a guy helping you.
Female.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It is.
Oof, I mean, that's
and it's something I didn't when I was going through my divorce. I didn't know anything about it. I had no idea. And I know it's been around for a while. I've been divorced for several years now, so I'm not quite sure if it was around then, but it's been around for quite a while. And so I encourage people to check it out and see if there is, if they need it, if there's something in their area. And even if there's not, you can still go on the website. I think you can register. There's videos on there. So, you can still go through it yourself, I believe. But I think it's best to be with people.
Sure. No, the group setting is incredibly helpful to so many folks.
Yeah.
I wonder if you don't mind commenting on it. What's the dynamic like in there if you have men and women both, who are in that sort of setting? And what's the focus? Is it more towards just reconnecting with God, or I'm just curious.
So it is, even though divorce care, I would say that it is based on faithful ideals. There are people who are going to go that are not of the faith. So, they don't hit you over the head with it. But they talk about all the different things basically that Jesus would tell you. And there's a man and a woman co-host on the videos that we watch. I think it's done in a very respectful manner. It just shows how people can be so frustrated, but then, and I do know that faith is mentioned in here. I'm just trying to say if there's anyone who's really not, I don't want to turn people off. They still should go. I mean, there's a lot, I think, to get out of it. Maybe just like you might say, like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting where they talk about a higher power. This goes a little bit farther than that, I believe. But I think it's not going to offend people who are not of the faith. I want to help people. I'm speaking specifically to Christian women, but if someone happens on my podcast and can find some solace in it, then I welcome that. I welcome that. And so back to your question, I think people are very, very respectful. Um, there's a lot of hurt in the room, of course.
Sure.
And so no one is going to start kind of, criticizing the woman or the man. I have found that to not be the case.
Good.
A lot of times people are just very quiet and they're not even wanting comfortable about sharing just yet.
Sure.
And some people are more comfortable.
Sure. I'm glad to hear that. I really am. It sounds like it's a very, very well run program, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm impressed that you got that put together. Now, this is something that you're doing with somebody else. It's through your church. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So then you've got a new thing coming up that's just yours, though, right?
Yes. Yes.
Tell us
So
about that. Yeah.
at the time, remember, I didn't know about divorce care if it was out. I didn't see around me anything to kind of help me go through what I was going through. And so now I'm reading more. I'm looking at all the wonderful resources that are available to people out there. And I said, when I was going through this, I would have loved a devotional journal that just could raise some of the issues that I was going through, but maybe not even understanding I was going through them. And they could help me through this. And so I said, you know what, you need to create one. And so Beautifully Loved, a devotional journal for women living single, and is going to come out in the fall. It is just that it's a combination. It's not a planner, but it's a combination of a devotional with journaling pages and with some planner type pages to take you through a year. And it's undated. So if you start in the middle of the year, that's fine. You don't have to just start at January. To talk about some of the things during the devotional part, I share a lot of the things that I was going through that I wished I had understood more as I was going through that time. There's places for you to write down wins that you may have, because there are good days and bad days, and we want to celebrate the wins. There are things that, and this is not legalistic. Well, when I say legalistic, I don't mean biblically, but I mean legal. I don't deal with the legal issue of divorce. You need to get an attorney. I don't have that. No, I don't want that responsibility, but I also don't have
Gotcha.
that. Yeah. But there's some places for you to write down kind of what you need to do this week and things like that. And it's something that I didn't have at the time. And so I'm working on that. It'll be both in physical format and for people who love digital planners. I'm really excited about it. And if you're interested in that, you can let me know that you're interested in it by signing up at beautifullyloved.shop, SHOP, and just let me know, and I will send information out to you when we're getting closer to launch that. But I just think that could be helpful for so many people out there. Again, I'm a woman, so I am leaning a little bit more toward women on this, because that's just my experience, what I know.
Sure.
And there may be a time perhaps when I can create something with a man and have something for the men could do too. But I would say this one is a little bit more women focused, of course, because it says that on the title. But most importantly, it's that one big lesson that I learned in that dark night of the soul, was that God loves me. I am beautifully loved. I am still loved, and I don't have to worry about that. And so that is what I have created. It's the designers working on it now, and I'm very excited with it.
Oh, I love that. I can't wait for that to come out. And you said that's just later this year that's coming up?
Yes, yes. I would say, I'm going to say fall, but I'm not sure if that's going to be closer to Christmas or not.
Okay.
We'll have to see.
So noted. I got you. And we'll have links to all that for a pre-order or a sign up or anything like that, right?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Beautiful. So we'll put those in the show notes for everybody. I think that's just a wonderful project. I applaud you for putting that together. That sounds very
Thank
nice.
you.
Very
Thank you
nice.
so much.
One of the things that we also talk about on the show is building discipleship and spreading the word and so on.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you're certainly doing that through your podcast, at least to a degree, and now through your new program. Is that primarily how you work that, or are there other ways in your life that you're also spreading the word and building discipleship?
Yeah. So I also have a weekly blog newsletter, kind of whatever you want to say. It's called Positively Joy, Faith and Divorce. It's on the Substack platform, if you're familiar with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'll share that with you as well. And we talk about, so I definitely am talking about relations, about divorce, but I have to, you have to remember that there are people who originally came to me to hear about joy and understand what that is. And so the podcast, or rather the newsletter, is a little bit more um, combination of some discussions about relationships, divorce, but also getting back to that original idea of just what is joy and how to lean on the Lord. So I definitely would say that I am encouraging discipleship in that way, and it's a little bit of a mix. I, for example, over July 4th, I wanted to talk about how we should be so grateful for our freedoms, and so I did a post on that, which is a little bit out of the norm, but I felt called to do that. Certainly, I've talked about experiences that I've had when I moved here. There was some problems with the rental house, and there was a little bit of craziness going on, and that was a time when I had to lean on God because there was nothing I could do to move along this process. And I talked a little bit about what that was like, and how just finding joy in that moment when you're in the middle of chaos. And so I wrote about that. And so, the newsletter, I would say, is a little mixture of joy and the issues of, the relationships and separation and divorce.
Nice. Nice. I love that. It's funny when you talk to people about discipleship, they think, oh, whoa, it's this huge task, and like I have to rally some army and like stand in front of 5,000 people or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't realize that if you just do what you're doing, which is lead by example, put yourself out there, talk about your faith and what it does for you, that people will
Mm-hmm.
come to that. People will find that. And so really it's just about talking about what you believe in. Do you feel like you're just leading by example?
I try to. I'd say yes. I certainly try to. And I think it's easy to do when you come to the realization, like I have, that the Lord is and should be just a huge part of your life. It's a daily thing. He is with us through the Spirit all the time, and you can call on Him all the time. In the devotional, Whispering in His Ear, which was the first book that I produced, I just did some kind of, oh gosh, angel on your shoulder type things. Like there was a time when um I thought I lost something important, or actually it was more of an important task to do. And the Lord just made me realize in that moment that you needed to get this done. And I got it done, and amazing things happened after that. Or the time when my mother-in-law, who's since passed on, was suffering from dementia, and I just couldn't comfort her. I couldn't console her. She was, just got very upset. And her son, my husband, was in the house, and I was with her, but he was in another part of the room. Anyway, he comes in and he was like, Mom, what's the matter? And she was just very fussy. Sometimes I don't know if you've ever experienced someone with dementia. And then he said, Do you want to pray? Now, I never thought to say that. He said, Mom, do you want to pray? And she said, yes. And then they prayed together, and then she settled. I'm like, whoa, oh my goodness. I just never would have even thought. I mean, I was getting caught up in the whole thing about how I couldn't console her. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a bad situation. There are times when you can just turn to the Lord in the middle, like while you're in your car, in the middle of just whatever, and find solutions and find comfort. And so that devotional, Whispering in His Ear, was where I first started talking about that, and started talking about how you can find joy there. And so I think that, talking about that, trying to show, aspects from your own life where you found these things to be true, it can help other people understand and look into their own lives and find how they can find the Lord there.
That's beautiful, and that's really all anybody can ask of anybody is just lead by example, share your story. I do
Mm-hmm.
believe that God gives us all a story,
Mm-hmm.
and when He does, it's our responsibility to share it and try and
Absolutely.
help others with it. And you definitely seem like you you abide by that.
I do. I do so much. And there's an opportunity I have coming up to speak at a conference with other speakers, because I am a speaker. So if anyone's needs a speaker for their conference or women's ministry, please,
Great.
I'll be happy to talk to you. So I'm going to go to this conference of speakers, and I'm going to talk about witnessing, how we are called to witness. We are called to speak. And at this conference, there are veteran speakers, people who've been doing this for a long time. I would say that I am not in the expert level at all, but then there are brand new people who know they have a message. They know God has given them a message, and they are unsure how to convey the message. They're unsure how to speak. And so I'm going to talk about that.
That's amazing. Do you want to tell everybody like where that is and what that is and give them an idea?
Absolutely. I don't know when this is going to run. So this is actually next week, but it's the Christian
Oh,
Communicators Conference.
okay.
It is in the week, this week coming up at the end of July. Again, not sure when this is going to run, but it is a yearly conference. It's a great conference for new and experienced, I won't say new and old, new and experienced speakers. And it's held in Texas in the Dallas area. And so I recommend it to anyone who feel like they have a message, but they're a little unsure as to what to do. And this will be my third year. Last year, I was able to speak at that conference, and they've asked me to speak again. And like I said, I'm going to talk about witnessing.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, congratulations on that. I love that you're doing that. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Is that something that you reached out to them about, or did they come find you because of the podcast and who you are and that type of thing?
Well, so again, this is my third year going to the conference just as an attendee, and
Right.
so they know me, and they asked me if I would speak.
I see. All right. So they already knew you were part of the club, and they said, "Hey, you've
Yes,
got something to say."
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
That's wonderful.
but
One,
but I'll share some ways that people can contact me.
yeah,
I am
please.
on a couple of speaker websites, and I know there are people who are trying to get their programs together, and people who are trying to decide what they're going to do, and I can help you with that.
Okay, that's beautiful. And you're going to give me that information too?
Absolutely, I'll give it
All
all to
right.
you.
Folks, you got to check out these show notes because these show notes are going to just be loaded with all kinds of awesome stuff from Yvette on how you can reach her and connect with her and whatnot. So I love that you're doing all that. That's just fantastic. The speaker thing, of course. Now, have you spoken at other events besides this one? It sounds like you're an established speaker.
I have, yeah. And as I said, I am not an expert. There are some wonderful speakers out there, but we all have our own message that God gave us to say, right? So I
Right.
have. I'm speaking at a church in Kansas City this and coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm speaking at another event in the fall. I am speaking. I spoke at a church earlier this year. It was actually Martin Luther King Day, which was an interesting day to talk about faith because, of course, he was a pastor. I mean, yeah, I've spoken various different places, and the more you do it, the more your message gets out there, and people find out about you. I do feel that God has given me a message, and it's again, it was just singly on joy and understanding what that is. But now I've just kind of narrowed it a little bit to have a more of a targeted audience. But I think the message can be applied to so many people because even if you're not divorced, you know someone who is.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. I love that you're taking so many avenues to go out there and spread his word, and further your own cause, in his name. I just think it's absolutely fantastic what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
So, all right. Anything else you want to leave for everybody in terms of how to contact you, things coming up, anything like that?
Yeah, well, I'm on all the socials. I am primarily on Facebook and Instagram under Positively Joy Podcast. I am on TikTok, although I'm not there as much. You can only do so much. But I
Right.
am on TikTok, Positively Joy Podcast. So just look up Positively Joy Podcast, and you can generally find me in a lot of places. The podcast, Positively Joy, Healing Hearts After Divorce, is wherever you go for podcasts. Be it Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you go. And then I'll give you the Substack address. We didn't talk about the fiction that I write, and that can be for another day. But I actually have some crime novels. I'm one of those Christians that like thrillers. And so I wrote a couple of books with a
Well,
Christian main character who is a journalist. She's not me. She's based on me. She's not me. And she's helping solve some mysteries. And it's called the Linda
wow.
Radcliffe Chronicles. And I've written the first two. and I need to get book 3 done, but it's been kind of busy. And so I'm on Amazon, and I'll share all that with you. I just feel like there's so Christians, we're not monolithic. There's lots of
Right.
different Christians out there. We all have different interests. I like thrillers. I just saw Superman over the weekend, and I like the superhero movies, and I even like some horror movies, which I know sounds crazy, but that's just me. So I know there's other Christians out there who like thrillers, and so I decided to do thrillers and mystery. So I decided to do that series, and my character Linda Radcliffe, she's flawed, she's incredibly flawed, but so are we all, and so it's I really like her. She's a great character.
I love that. I don't know how I missed that part of it, but I love it. That's fantastic. What made you write fiction? I mean, I've got another minute here, so I'm not letting you go. What made you get into fiction like that?
As a young journalist, and again, she is not me, but she is based on some experiences I've been through. I used to, when I got first into this career, I was a police reporter, as a lot of young journalists start out, and I covered a serial killer, and that serial killer affected me just as journalists. And again, this is probably for another day, but journalists, we experience a lot because we have to tell the stories of people who've been hurt and people who've gone through some difficult things. And it's important for me to recognize that I've got God on my side, so I don't have to keep that stuff inside me, right? But I did cover a serial killer, and I had to talk to the families of the victims. And as a very young girl, I was 25 years old. And so I ended up leaving that job because it was a little much. I felt like I was beginning to get hardened by what I was doing. And so I did. I left that job and went on to other jobs. And it's still in journalism, but doing other things. And so that story always stayed with me. And the anecdote of the night where I sat with a family of a young girl who was missing. She was a Christian. She taught Bible study, and she was missing. By all accounts, a beautiful young woman, and there was some concern that maybe she had gotten abducted and killed by the serial killer. This
Wow.
is in one. This is in one town. They found a body in another town. So the husband went to identify the body, and the family and me. Why they let me in their home, I still don't know to this day. But they let me in their home, and we were all waiting on the phone call to see if this was the girl. And it was. It was their daughter. And we're sitting there, I'm taking notes, we're all crying. And that always stayed with me. And that's been many, many years ago. And I've always thought maybe I could write fiction. Again, the non-journalism writing just came from 2019 on. It hasn't been that long since the Lord has just been showing me and giving me other things to do
My
just
goodness.
since then. So I'm doing fiction now, and I'm enjoying it. I love reading fiction, and I really am enjoying writing. And this character is an interesting person. She's divorced. She's flawed. She's got issues. But this is happening, and there's some murders. It's a thriller, so there's some murders in the book. And this may not be for everybody, but there are people who enjoy that, and we try to find, we try to come to a happy ending, but there's cliffhangers at the end of book 1 and 2, and so like I said, I'm in the middle of book 3 right now.
Well, you can tell you're having a blast writing this stuff just by the way
And
you're talking
yes,
about
it is
it.
fun. It is.
That's awesome. Okay, I want to hear a lot more about that. I need to have you on one of my other podcasts, though. We're going to have to talk
Okay.
about this afterwards because you've got so
Okay.
much you're doing, and oh my goodness! But as
There's
far
there's
as
too much going on.
I love it, I love every minute of it. Every time we turn a page, there's more, so it's really cool. Uh,
Literally.
as far as this one goes, I want to thank you very, very much for sharing what your mission is, why you're doing it, talking about spiritual warfare the way you did openly, and sharing your own concerns and struggles and so on as we got to this point. And I want to also just thank you, in His name, that for what you're doing in terms of building discipleship at every turn. With everything that you touch, it seems like you're putting yourself out there and leading people that direction. So I just want to applaud you for that. I think it's wonderful.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for what you're doing and encouraging those lions to roar.
Thank you so much. All right, folks. I mean, I would love to sum this up with, journalist and podcast host, but there's so much more to this incredible lady. Yvette Walker, thank you for being on today. You've been amazing.
Thank you.
Uh, Folks, it's time. It is time to wake up the lions. More than that, it's time for you to take your rightful place with your brothers and sisters and let us all hear you roar. The world's ready. You're ready. You just have to believe it. Until next time.